Hello, investors. It's Don Vandenbord, Chief Investment Officer with Revere Asset Management. Today is Monday, April 28th, 5:53 p.m. Eastern Time, coming to you from St. Augustine Beach, Florida, with tonight's Revere Roundup Daily Market Insight video. Market state, we're in a short-term uptrend. O'Neill follow-through days on April 22nd and 23rd. Check the trend gauge over here. Leaders acting well, flashing the coveted green arrow, and short-term major indexes above the 21-day moving average gives us another green arrow. However, for medium term and long term, using the 50-day and 200-day moving average, we've still got red arrows there. Those are two of the remaining hurdles to get across. Let's bring in our 9 steps from bottom to bull that we've been reviewing periodically. And, starting off the bottom, the first thing that needs to happen is the index is regaining the 8-day moving average, then the 21-day moving average. That happened on 423 and 424. We need an O'Neill follow-through day to start addressing buying leading stocks. Got those on 422 and 23. And then we need no distribution days in the first 4 days after the follow-through day. That's a key component to maintaining the momentum to the upside, and we just accomplished that today. Then we want to see the 8-day exponential moving average cross up through the 21. When we get to the charts, you're going to see that happen today on the NASDAQ 100. It'll happen tomorrow on the S&P 500. Next 4 steps above that, we need to regain the 50-day moving average, change the slope of that 50-day to positive, have the short-term 21-day moving average cross up through the 50-day on the indexes, and then finally regain the 200-day moving average on the indexes. So one step at a time, but we can check 5 steps off, and that's different from prior attempts that we've seen on putting in a bottom. This one, the most successful so far. So what happened today? Mild gains, but the bulls bought the dip. So we had like a 3.5 hour trend down from morning to early afternoon. Still, while that was happening, no real damage done to leaders or the indexes, as we were a bit extended to the upside. But then early afternoon, bulls came in and bought the dip in leading names and the indexes and really turned it into a positive day from what was looking like a normal but harsh pullback day. Here are the numbers. We got our 21-21 list back, and we'll discuss that as we go through the program. Those were up an average of 0.5% today. No help from the big eight, especially NVIDIA, down an average of 0.2%. But the RG8s, our 8 growth ETF composite, helps us keep our finger on the pulse of how are the ETFs that hold the growth stocks that we tend to traffic in, how are they acting? Well, that was up an average of 0.5% today, so good stuff there. S&P 500 opened up slightly, down almost 1% on the day, but that afternoon rally resulted in a slightly positive close. Better close for the equal weight, up about 1/3%. NASDAQ 100 also opening up about 0.1%, selling off in the morning, rallying in the afternoon to cut that to just about being flat by the end of the day. We'll look at the Dow mid and small caps as we go through, as those had decent green action. Global 60/40 up 0.17%. Our flagship GROTECTION portfolio up slightly, 0.06%. And we're going to start talking more about our TurboTection portfolio run by Connor and Ted. This is an offering that we have as we get bigger. We don't want to price ourselves out of some leading stocks that might not be liquid enough for GROTECTION. So we started this portfolio earlier this year. It's more aggressive than GROTECTION. You'll see disparities in the returns very often, as sometimes one zigs when the other zags. But Turbo down to 0.27% today. And as I said, we'll start talking more about that as going forward. So here's the S&P 500. You can see the low that we put in. Where's my line pen? There it is. A second day off that low, and then an attempt to reclaim the 21-day moving average last week failed. And at that point, it was looking like just another failed rally off the lows, like when Trump said he was pulling back on the tariffs. And then a couple days later, again, failed at the 21, but that was Tuesday. Wednesday, we regained a high of that day and the 21-day moving average. Had a follow through day up through the 5,500 level on Thursday. Overnight, we broke back below 5,500 and intraday today. Again, normal pullback, but you'd like to see a key level hold, and it did hold because we rallied, as I said, on the afternoons and mild pullback into the close. But the next target overhead is this declining 50-day moving average, which the S&P is about 1.7% away from that. But if you look at a weekly chart, it actually touched the 10-week moving average and was rejected today. So we'll be keeping an eye on the 10-week level as well as the 50-day moving average. And note, here's the purple line, the 80-day exponential moving average that'll come up through the green line. That's the 21. That'll happen tomorrow. You can see as I show the NASDAQ 100 that has already happened as they're basically overlapping, but the 8 is above the 21 there. We've got the declining 50-day overhead there. A lot of very similar look here as the NASDAQ 100 has outperformed, not today, but the 3 of the 4 days last week. It certainly did. Onto the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which has really been held back by an odd stock, United Healthcare, because it has such a big price weighting. But we did manage to get a close above the 21-day moving average today on the Dow. How about the equal weight S&P 500? You can see that's acting fine as well. 3 closes now above the 21-day moving average. On to mid caps. The mid cap index usually looks a lot like the equal weight S&P 500, and it does here too. You can see that the 3 closes above the 21-day moving average as well. And finally, Russell 2000 small caps, 3 closes above the 21-day moving average there as well. So things headed in the right direction, but we do have overhead resistance that we've got to get through. And after this fairly strong move up off the bottom over the last 6 days, a rest would be certainly acceptable. That's what we were expecting today, but a pleasant surprise, like I said, in the afternoon. Here's the morning trend lower for about 3.5 hours, and then 2.5 hours up into the close. So bears trying to take control with this pullback couldn't do it, came right into this 5470-ish area. That's where buyers showed up. So we'll keep an eye on that level as well. And like I said, an undercut and reclaim of this 5,500 level, certainly a positive for the bulls. All right, let's go to some interasset correlation. Here's the VIX pulling back. Actually, it was actually up with a late flurry. This because the VIX trades pre-market, these numbers don't coincide to what the actual. So 25.15 is right, but that was up 1.3%. Let's go to the U.S. dollar, which has been weak and was weak today, but is trading in this 2+ week consolidation below the below the lows from last August and September. Weaker dollar typically is a benefit to U.S. stocks. How did that dollar impact precious metals? A lot of people calling for a top in gold now, but gold said not so fast. A strong day today, up 1.4%, regaining the 8-day moving average. Gold stocks, it's closing right on the 8-day moving average, but holding the 21 3 of the last 4 days as it tried to pull back, up 1.3%. Silver lagging up 0.5%. Bitcoin, nice consolidation day. Put in a nice flag over the weekend. The weekend trading won't show on the daily chart of the ETF, which obviously doesn't trade over the weekend, but very nice consolidation here on Bitcoin. Let's go to bonds. BND, prices up means yields down. BND up 0.25%. TLT, the long bond, up 0.63%. So the 30-year yield pulled back, breaking below the 21-day moving average, and the 10-year yield, the TNX, also below the 21-day moving average, pulling back as well. That's our inter-asset correlation. Let's hit the tail of the tape. Stochastics are positive. For the most part. The percent of 5 days, percent of stocks on the S&P above the 5 day is fairly high at 76, but over 80 and below 20 are really where we get the secondary signals that tell us to pay attention. Fear and greed out of 37. News this week is going to be the big tech earnings after the close on Wednesday, Microsoft and Meta. After the close on Thursday, Apple and Amazon. He's coming into today, S&P and the NASDAQ against the 21 and the 50. 21 is support. We stayed above that, obviously, but hit the 10-week slash 50-day. Didn't hit the 50-day, but we hit the 10-week moving average and still below that level. This 5,500 level is pretty key for the S&P. The undercut and reclaim I already mentioned on that. And leaders, flat to positive or pullbacks constructive or not doing any damage. So far so good there on leaders. And we'll look at the 21-21 list in a minute. Day count up 4 with a 1 day consolidation, 4 days above the 8 day and 3 days above the 21 day. Expectations positive with the S&P and the NASDAQ being above the 21 day moving average. I talked about the two intraday trends. Sectors, biotech, banks, energy, utilities, healthcare, and real estate. Outperforming the S&P today to the downside, semiconductors, staples, and crude oil. So here are the GROTECTION holdings. 4 changes to the portfolio today, added to Palantir and GEV, and brought CrowdStrike and Uber. That brought the adjusted beta up to 0.62. Balance at risk or open heat, same thing, 2.52% to the downside. Here are the turbo holdings. You can see changes today. Ken Connor bought HIMS and ADMA, two pretty volatile stocks, but higher risk comes with higher reward. And they did get stopped on Geo today. So you can see the turbo holdings there as well. We'll add in turbo RVAB and rebar scores as we go forward. But bottom line on the day, mild gains but bullish action as the intraday dip got bought. Keys for tomorrow is that S&P and NASDAQ above the 21 day for support, below the 50-day resistance overhead. So we're kind of pinched between those two levels. And those, of course, are key, as well as that 5,500 level on the S&P. And we'll take a look at leaders, of course, as we always do. All right, let's get to the 21 over 21 list here. The first 6 are owned in-house. So they've got a red flag there, a green flag there. There might be a few more in here that are owned in turbo. I'll see as they go through. Normally, I just flag what Grow owns, but we'll go through this as well. So we'll start off with really the market leader, Palantir, relative strength, new high, despite the fact that it was extended. Intraday dips were bought on this today. Just a great cup base forming. Earnings next week. Hopefully we get a little bit of a handle, a little bit of sideways action here, and then maybe a good earnings report will bust it out of this. But we're in before the cup is full, so early entries. But then how O'Neill, you've got your targets 20 to 25% above to the upside after you get the breakout of a sound base, and this certainly is a sound base. So Palantir number 1. Also, Netflix continues to go higher after that nice double bottom base breakout. GE Vernova, tight action today. Good to see that. Bitcoin looking great. Uber, we added today after a pullback and a reversal on Friday. Great looking chart though. Earnings in 2 weeks. CrowdStrike broke out above this cup and handle in the 400 level, and a nice tight day for it today. Spotify earnings before the open tomorrow. We'll be keeping a close eye on that as it's right at the double bottom pivot. Robinhood, tied to Bitcoin, but very nice double bottom base forming there. Penumbra broke out, consolidating at a nice tight 3-day range right above the pivot and that 300 level. TGTX looking good. Earnings in 2 weeks. TKO continues to come up the right side of the base. DoorDash tight action right at the 50-day moving average with the 21 still below there. CRS, good reaction to earnings and holding right there at the pivot. Boeing, uh, double bottom base, good earnings growth now. Are there problems behind them? We don't know, but we do know that this is a big setup and great relative strength over the last 3 weeks. Good reaction to the recent earnings report and supposed to be cash flow positive again this year. And institutions traditionally pile into this name. This was the big leader in the Dow a few years ago before the 737 fiasco. So we like having these potential big names on here, and getting back to earnings growth will be a definite plus. Take two, looking great. Big numbers on its game that it has coming out. Chewy forming a very nice tight cup base here, coming up the right side. Zscaler, we talked about this last week. Connor talked in on Friday's podcast about how software security stocks were looking good. You can see this one. We bought CrowdStrike today, and this breaking above that 216, 217 level with above average volume the last 2 days. It's definite relative strength here. This looking really good. WGS at the top of the base, relative strength at a new high, but does have earnings in 2 days. Carvana, also earnings in 2 weeks, coming up the right side of a base. Guidewire, really nice tight double bottom forming here right around that 200 level, and some nice fundamental numbers there as well. And an energy play in here, Cheniere Oil and Gas, definite relative strength over the last 2 months, forming a tight, flat base. So we had a difficult time cutting this down. We had like 100 candidates for our 21-21 list, but the team whittled it down over the weekend and throughout the day today. And this is the final 21-21 list that will track stats for this week. And with that, we'll wrap it. As always, like to hear from you. The email's don@revereasset.com. If you're interested in becoming a client, my partner Dan Stewart can be reached at dan@revereasset.com. The phone's 855-REAL-WEALTH. That's 855-732-5932. Our flagship GROTECTION portfolio and our newest TurboTection portfolio are designed both with a dual mandate, and that is grow assets during uptrends, protect them during downtrends. And this is what we preach and discuss every night in our videos. Complete transparency. We have nowhere to hide. Nothing but the unvarnished truth in these videos. If we said something that wasn't true, our many subscribers and clients that watch them would just absolutely call us out on it. So you don't have integrity, you don't have anything. And that's what we pride ourselves. One of the things we pride ourselves on at Revere, in addition to protecting the downside and growing when making hay when the sun shines. And that'll wrap it for Monday, April 28th. This is Don Vandenbord with Revere Asset Management, telling it like it is. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.